I am coming to you today to bring you the lesson from the great outdoors, aka my patio, somewhere where I have been spending a lot of my time. Hopefully you have also been able to get out in this gorgeous weather and take advantage of it, and hopefully it stays around and we have no more snow. Never know though. I'm actually going to start this video off with going over the Crusades, because I kind of felt like a lot of people had some background knowledge, but there was a lot of misunderstanding that I got from your responses. I think there's only one person out there who got a 15 out of 15. So if that was you, you showed true understanding. Others of you, it was a struggle. So if you got those comments on what to do, hopefully this will help you, whereas maybe the reading wasn't as clear, or that Parezi that I put up. So to begin, there were a lot of crusades. There was not just one. We focus on the first three because those really are the ones that are the most important. The fourth one was absolutely a disaster. And then after that fourth one, people would try and create crusades, but none were as big as the first three. So that's why we focused on those. Now, the reason for the crusades, any crusades, like I gave that hint, was the Holy Land, what they considered the Holy Land, Palestine, Jerusalem. Similar to the Hajj, or the pilgrimage for Muslims, a lot of Christians at this time would take a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And for years, that was fine. They could do that safely. But then once these Turks started to take over the land, we know the Arab Muslims were taking over land, it started to get dangerous, for these pilgrims. Plus, you had them on the outskirts of the Byzantine Empire. And the Byzantine Empire is still important to Christianity. And so that is why the Pope calls for the First Crusade. It's to protect the pilgrims who were getting harmed on their pilgrimages, and also to keep the Byzantine center of Constantinople safe and not to be sacked and taken over. If you did get in the book, you probably went over this page because it's a map, but on page 667, I do want to show you, it's a really good map of what was going on at the time. Okay, so here we have our Holy Roman Empire, and the only reason why it's called Holy Roman Empire is because when it was founded, Christianity was the religion. When the Roman Empire was founded way back in 500, it was pagan because it was a polytheistic belief. So that's why it's called the Holy Roman Empire, because it was founded on Christianity. But you see all these other people who were coming in and kind of right on that border of the Byzantine Empire, which could then go into the Holy Roman Empire, and they did not want to give that up. So the Pope calls for people to take up their arms, take up the cross, that's what crusade means, and to protect the Holy Land. Now, the thing that a lot of you were putting was that, it was a lot of peasants who were getting into this fight, who were feeling like this was something that they should do, and they were very ill prepared. They didn't know how to fight, and many of those everyday people, common people, didn't make it because they had no idea what they were getting into. They were leaving here and trying to go here, and they didn't quite know what they signed up for. However, there was a professional army that came after them, and so we do consider the First Crusade a success because the Crusaders, now a lot of you were putting they surprised the Muslims. Yes, that's true. But that's not just the reason for the success. The reason for the success was that they were able to recapture Jerusalem, the Holy Land. They split it into 4 states, and so that's the true success, okay? So the reason for the First Crusade was because you're having these attacks on Christians themselves who were pilgrimaging to the Holy Land, which never happened before. And then also they were right on the border of, the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople was getting attacked. And so they wanted to keep Christianity the majority and keep it safe, that land safe. So it was a success because they were able to recapture the Holy Land. So you may ask, then why was there a need for the second one? Correct. Why was there a need for the second one if the first one was a success? The need for the second one was because one of those 4 states got recaptured. And so my opinion is that because the First Crusade grew so much attention, that now people wanted to be a part of the Second Crusade. They wanted to protect that land. And I understand that. I do. I get that. Maybe if 2 states were taken over, maybe then I'd start to think about, we need to do something. If 3 states had been taken over, then for sure something needed to be done. But the fact that only 1 state had been taken over, I'm not sure a crusade was really necessary. And as you read, there were multiple problems because it wasn't really to save anything. It was more to gain fame. So those kings and the Pope called for the Second Crusade. There was a lot of fighting. They mistreated the local people. A lot of you were putting that. And I would have said, you're missing one key part. And the key part is they lost everything. They lost their claim on the Holy City or the Holy Land in Jerusalem. So do I think a Second Crusade was needed? Not at the time. And the result of that was a failure, which means that's why there had to be a third one. Okay, so the first one was an absolute success. They gained back that territory. The second one probably didn't need to happen, and it was a failure because they lost everything that the first one gained. And now you have a new character called Saladin who became very, very powerful. So the third one is kind of the most famous one for the people who were involved. You heard of King Richard, Lionheart, and there isn't a clear kind of success or failure. And some of you put that, which then I would have responded, I need you to pick an opinion. In your mind, was this a success or was it a failure? If you think it's a success, that way you could say, well, it ended the crusade, so that's a success. And also the pilgrims were not harmed. Saladin said, you can come, we won't harm you, you can go about your religious pilgrimage here, and that's fine. You could say that it is a success for that reason. Or you could say it's a failure because even though he was being kind and courteous to allow the pilgrims to come, he kept the land. He said, the land's mine, I want it fair and square. You weren't prepared, you had your leaders fighting, you mistreated the local people, couldn't gain their support, and so you can come, but the land is mine. You need to make that choice and support it, okay? So I'm not sure why, again, it was such a hard thing to understand, but I do realize that a lot of people were having trouble with that. So feel free to redo it, resubmit, just put that this has been redone. You then, Wednesday, which is yesterday, that's true. It's today. Today is Wednesday. Anyway, you then were looking at the pros and cons because there are always the positives and the negatives. And in the negatives, you see the true kind of grotesque, horrible, torturous pastimes of the Middle Ages. You know, we all kind of collectively thought that the gladiator games were pretty bad. But yeah, living in this time, if you weren't a Christian, if you were considered pagan, if you didn't renounce the multiple gods, even if you were innocent and they didn't believe you, yeah, it was not nice what would happen to you. You read about the burning at the stake alive. They did that a lot, amongst other things that we don't need to go into. So there were a lot of negatives that revolved around really a persecution of anyone who wasn't a Christian, which I find kind of ironic, because it used to be the Christians who were persecuted and they didn't like it, and then once they had the power, they did the same thing. So you read about the Inquisitions, all that stuff was negative because someone could kind of frame someone, and if that person couldn't prove or wasn't believed, then they were harmed. So those are the negatives. Positives, though, a lot of positives, okay? We see that as these people were leaving their manor life, remember that feudal system, they were peasants, they really didn't know much outside of the land of their lord. They started to see things in the other lands, these advancements, these technologies, the better way to live, spices for their food, silk for their clothing, perfumes to make them smell good, soap to make them clean, knowledge about medicine, philosophy, all this stuff that was lost in the dark age of the Middle Ages, and due to the way that they were living in this feudal life system, they start to see a whole different world, and they want it brought back. They want to have these things available to them where they live. So although there was not great things that came from the Crusades in the means of persecuting people, what came because they saw how others lived is the absolute positive. And it really does start to change the life in Europe. It starts to, as I like to say, brighten a bit. Okay, we were in the dark ages. Now the light starts to slowly turn on, and these people who were living pretty pathetic, boring, not much going on for them lives are now aware of others out in the world and ways to make their life better. So today what you're going to do is you're going to take a glance through all of chapter 23. 23 is kind of the revival. The towns are coming back in. Trade is coming back in. We're starting to build large architectural buildings that have a specific now cultural medieval style. A lot of you use them for your castles, and boy, some of those castles were amazing, as well as bringing back education. So you're going to take a glance. There's going to be a form that's attached. It's going to kind of be like the document I sent, where I'll give you the section to read, and then you'll answer some questions on it. So again, chapter 23, it's going to start on page 682. It's going to go through page 699, but you won't be reading all of those pages. I'll put the page number, I'll put the section I want you to focus on, and then, like I said, there will be a form attached to where you will answer the question. I'm probably not going to put any kind of an answer, because every time I do, it marks you wrong, even though you're right. So you're not going to get an instantaneous grade or score from this form right away. But as I've said, or I've written to you, I get to see all your responses, and then I'll let you know if there's, something that needs to be done. Okay? So that's it. If you watch this video, then you should have what you need to redo your Crusades and get a better grade, if you need that. And then I will see you, because Friday, which should be tomorrow, is going to be on the Black Death, which I find ironic and kind of weird that we're ending with the Black Plague. That kind of ended everything of the Middle Ages. So that's that. And that's that. That's 6th grade. You've made it from the beginning of man all the way to what we consider the age of exploration that brings upon the modern ages. So you've done it all. I told you you would. You might have skipped a few things here and there, but we made it, guys. We did.